So let's get started. I'm delighted to introduce our first two distinguished speaker. First, Siddharth Singh from the International Energy Agency and Gabriela Prata Diaz from UNEP. I'm going to introduce you, Sid, first. You do the presentation, and then that will be Gabriela's turn. So, Sid, welcome. You kick off the webinar by providing essential context on how the energy consumption of data center has evolved over time and why the emergence of AI is a game changer for this sector. Sid, you work on clean energy investments within the Office of the Chief Energy Economist at the IEA, and you are currently co-leading the IEA's AI workstream. Sid, we are honored to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours. I will just say that for this first section, we'll open the Q&A after both your presentation and Gabriela's presentations are done for a joint discussion. Thank you so much. And Sid, I let you share your screen and kick off the webinar.
Thank you so much, Helen. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, depending on where you are. First, I'd like to just congratulate the French AI Action Summit team for doing a great job. I think it's a very important summit at the right time. I'm happy, obviously, to get into the numbers. Maybe just give me a second while I put my screen up. And Helen, you can confirm if you can see it in just a minute.
Yes, we can see your screen just fine.
Perfect. And I think it should be full screen now.
It
Okay,
is.
excellent. Thanks very much again. I think we're going to have a very good discussion because clearly, I think for everyone who's here, we all understand that artificial intelligence is really emerging as one of the more consequential technologies of our time. It's a very general purpose technology, much like just having a simple calculator or a computer or even the very act of language. So it's one of those general purpose technologies that has uh, potentially thousands of or millions of applications, across our economy, and therefore it really can potentially have a big impact. But then it comes at a cost, and we're here to kind of understand both sides of the story. So at the IEA, we look at not just the impact of AI on the energy sector in terms of energy demand and the energy that is going to be supplied for the electricity, for cooling and other applications, but also the role of the artificial intelligence in enhancing the energy sector itself in terms of optimizing it, in terms of making it more efficient, and having other important objectives met, such as energy transitions and energy security. Uh, Now, the uptake of AI in recent years has been very, very quick. In fact, we find that the uptake of AI has been faster than many other technologies that have come before it. So, for example, computers or the internet or smartphones, they were all picked up quickly, but not as fast as generative AI is being picked up today. So that just gives you an illustration of how it's quickly, being accepted by the public and by the economy at large as a very useful tool. I will move on quickly to my first slide. Here we just wanted to illustrate uh, the boom in artificial intelligence related investments that are happening. Now, the top three technology companies in the US already have a bigger capital expenditure than the entire US oil and gas industry combined, for last year, which is quite significant. And here in this graph that you see in front of you, it looks at data center investments, data center construction. And in fact, the investments have doubled in the past 2 years alone. And this data center expansion has come or has been led by the demands created by artificial intelligence. So it's clearly something that we are tracking very closely. And we want to, delve into this number a little more deeply. In fact, I'd like to just inform everyone who is attending today that the IEA is working on a special report on the energy and AI nexus that will be launched in April this year. So you will find much more and deeper analysis on the subject of the AI and energy nexus. Now, why is this relevant? Why are we talking about data centers? Because a large data center today can consume as much electricity as 100,000 households. So it's almost like setting up an entire city overnight, which adds quite a bit of strain onto the system. But at the same time, it's very important for us to contextualize this in the larger energy system, because at the end of the day, the IEA analyzes all technologies, all sources of demand, and all sources of supply. So we find that, firstly, as a general, finding for the World Energy Outlook that came out last year, is that we are quickly moving into what we call the age of electricity. So it's an era where we find that the rate of electrification of end energy uses is increasing quite rapidly. In fact, the rate of electrification is going to double and triple over the next decade and beyond, which is quite significant, leading to the very important role of electricity in meeting the demands of for energy as a whole for all sorts of consumers. And in this, data centers play a very important role. As you can see here, we are this graph on the right-hand side. It looks at the annual electricity demand growth. It looked at the past decade, and then it looks at the next decade. And in the next decade, these new sources of electricity demand, that is data centers and electric vehicles, EVs and data centers are the two biggest that kind of drive electricity demand growth from new users. Of course, then there are more traditional users such as air conditioners and others that are also driving demand in this period. Moving on, this is of course something that Helen already mentioned, but globally, electricity demand from data centers is about 1 or 2%. We find that in key markets, United States, China, and the EU are the top three in that order of data center capacity in the world. We find that anywhere between 2 to 4.5% of electricity is going into data centers. This number is currently, it's a range because the precise number is still being estimated. We will, of course, have more precise numbers in our upcoming report. But again, as Helen correctly mentioned, it's not the global picture that tells you the full story. It is actually the local challenges that really define the nature of data centers today. So in Ireland and in Virginia in the United States, these are kind of major hubs for data centers. Already 20 to 25% of electricity demand in these locations are coming from data centers, which presents quite a lot of local challenges. Firstly, we have to appreciate that there's a mismatch in the development times of this infrastructure. So a data center can be built relatively quickly in the period of months, whereas the energy that supplies the data centers, we're talking about the capacity for power generation. We're also talking about the networks, the grids, and so on. That could take many more months and, in fact, years to set up. So there's a mismatch, and which is why we have emphasized at the agency that there cannot be AI without energy. It is very important for us to ensure that the energy sector is very responsive to the needs of data centers, without which we cannot unlock the potential of AI for the economy as a whole. But having said that, we also must understand that while AI is the future, we cannot just chart the growth exponentially. We have to understand that there are many uncertainties. There are uncertainties, firstly, on how much the uptake of AI will be. Will AI use actually proliferate in a major way in terms of generation of videos and so on, which of course consumes a lot more energy? Or will it be more small models, small language models and so on that are more fitting for certain purposes that become the major use case for AI? So there's a bit of uncertainty on how AI will be used. There's also uncertainty on the physical constraints, the supply of chips and other materials that go into the AI supply chain. But also importantly, there's also an uncertainty regarding the efficiency of computer chips and data centers itself. So here we see in this graph, actually, if you look at the y-axis, it's not linear. It's on a logarithmic scale. What we find is that in the past 15 years or so, chips that cater to AI applications, they consume 99% less electricity than they did 15 years ago. So this is quite an impressive achievement in terms of efficiency. But the question really is, where do we go from here? What are the next 10 years looking like? Are we reaching some form of constraints in how efficient chips can become? So those are questions that are still uncertain. There are also uncertainties regarding the location of where data centers will be, and how they are able to shift the load of computation, because those are all determinants of where energy is used. And there's of course issues of the design of data centers itself, the application of cooling, and how heat generated from data centers can be reused. So all these factors eventually will determine how efficient we can make it. Again, just to say that we will have stronger estimates on the trajectory of efficiency over the next 10 years in our upcoming report. Now, while so far we have talked about all the energy that is being used by data centers, we also at the IEA want to have a very careful view of the application of AI in the energy sector. Now, there are several potential applications. This includes, of course, helping with grid integration of variable renewable energy, which is very important. If we have to achieve large shares of solar and wind, we'll need to ensure that the grid actually can integrate it, and AI can help with that. There's of course efficiency in buildings in terms of demand response. There is predictive maintenance, which helps infrastructure for energies, have longer uptime. And of course, you can have battery chemistry innovations where, cathode molecules and others, we're able to really innovate on that front and ensure that battery densities increase. And therefore we have, progress towards clean energy transitions. But I'd like to make a quick, example here in this particular case study, which looks at a large R&D firm based in the United States. We look at about 1,000 scientists or so were studied on how they are able to innovate on new material discovery. So just to say that materials are very important. Of course, materials are used in all sorts of things. For example, in the specific to the energy sector, you could have novel photovoltaic structures that ensure that solar PV becomes more efficient. And more efficient solar PV, of course, again, helps with clean energy transition. So that's just one example of the importance of material discovery. Here we see there were two groups of scientists in the same firm. Both groups were similar. They are in charge of discovering new materials for all sorts of applications. And in the first 12 months of their of the observation period, they were able to discover almost the same number of materials every month. But then AI was introduced to one of the teams. So the chart in blue are the bars in blue are is a group of scientists that were given an AI application, an AI tool for material discovery. And what did we find? That over the course of the next year or so, they were able to discover 40% more materials as compared to the group of scientists that did not have that AI application. So AI in this case really helped accelerate clean energy innovation. And some of this, some of these materials can then be used for, of course, positive outcomes in the energy industry. So I will end here. This was just one illustration of how AI can be used in the energy sector towards positive outcomes, towards energy transitions and energy security. But of course, there are still quite a few uncertainties. And for that reason, the IEA will come up with a report in April this year, which will have a deeper look into the AI and energy nexus. With that, I'll thank you for your attention and pass it back to Helen.
Helen, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Gabriela. Thank you so much, Sid, for the presentation. And as I said, for the questions regarding the Sid's presentation, they will be taken after Gabriella's presentation, which is quite complementary to Sid's presentation. So, Gabriella, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Gabriella Preta Diaz, you are Head of Business Models and Finance at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, and also served as acting head at the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency. Previously, you held a key role at ADIN, the Portuguese National Energy Agency, as coordinating director, where you were responsible for implementing energy efficiency policies in Portugal. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today and help us delve a little bit more about the environmental impact of data centers beyond energy consumptions. Gabriella, the floor is yours. In the meantime, I encourage you to start putting your question either in the Q&A box or in the chat. Thank you so much. We can see your screen, Gabriella. Oh, and you're muted.
Yeah, it's a problem with these buttons. All right. Thank you so much, Hélène, and it's great to be able to join this webinar. Thanks so much for inviting us to make a small intervention here about the global environmental impacts of data centers. As you have mentioned, Hélène, I would like to delve into a bit more of a broader perspective, a broader scene of what it represents, the use of data centers. And as brilliantly exposed already by Sid, we have several applications that are really demanding a lot from data centers, and also not only the performance, but also the build of new infrastructure that comes along with it. And here, artificial intelligence is for sure one of the main hot topics of the day and one of the biggest drivers of demand of resources. But I would like also to call the attention, not only AI itself, but AI integrated into all the applications that we use today. And perhaps one of the least talked about ones is the gaming industry, which actually demands a lot of energy
Gabriella?
and resources.
Oops,
Yes?
so sorry to interrupt you. Could you put your presentation in full screen? Because we only have the first slide of your presentation, which was showing. So sorry to interrupt.
No problem. What about now? Is it okay?
Yeah, so we can see your presentation. It's not. Could you put it in full screen, just like as a slideshow?
I did it. And now?
Well, it's not showing in full screen, but maybe if you just pass the slide, even not in full screen, that will work. And anyway, we will share your presentation with the rest of the group after the webinar.
Okay, well, I'm sorry about this. I don't know why I cannot make it work. Perhaps I would need the help of artificial intelligence. Anyway, so just moving on, also digitalization and the use of all these IT tools have the flip side that we can, as also mentioned before, we can use them also to improve climate action. And here are some examples of the applications that can be implemented. And here you can see, for example, tools like building management systems and around Industry 4.0, and the use of smart and efficient appliances, smart cities, and EVs and the electrification of mobility and heating and cooling. Now, one important thing to highlight, and because in UNEP we actually dedicate quite a significant amount of time and effort to work with developing countries and emerging economies, is that, as we have seen before, these developments are actually quite big in the OECD countries, I would say, but the growth and the expected growth over the coming years in the rest of the world, especially in Asia, Southeast Asia, in Africa and Latin America, is quite relevant, not only because of the growth linked to these economies, but also the associated increase of demand for data and the growing demand for sovereignty in data processing and storage in these countries. So it's actually becoming quite common that we hear that some type of data cannot be stored elsewhere rather than these countries or some of the countries that we are actually working on. So in Asia, of course, we should highlight not only China, but also the expected growth around Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Africa perhaps lagging a bit behind, but its growth is quite exponential. But however, if we look into sub-Saharan Africa, it continues to lag when we compare it to other regions in what concerns total capacity of data centers use. And in Latin America, I've recently been in an event where one of the government responsibles of one of the biggest Latin American countries was actually quite worried on how to supply in terms of energy and other resources the construction of new data centers that would put a huge pressure on the energy sector and the energy grids of that particular country. So it's actually becoming one of the critical issues when we see these developments, and it's becoming an industry on its own right. But in UNEP also we try to look into other aspects rather than just energy, and this is, I hope you can see it relatively well, but basically this is a simplified illustration of the life cycle of a data center. And here yeah.
Gabriele, I'm sorry, you're still only on slide 2. I don't know, maybe, do you want to send me your, oh, perfect. Yeah, that's
now
right.
It's good?
Yeah, but you have, like, it's not, yeah, now it's the right slide.
And now?
Yeah, that's the right slide. You have the simplified illustration.
Well, I don't know what's happening here. Anyway, so I think images are just especially supporting to myself rather than the audience. But anyway, so we basically divide or consider several areas of the life cycle of the data center. The first one associated to material extraction, so including metal ores and material like other minerals that are actually quite critical to the development of this sector. And then we look into manufacturing as the kind of the second biggest component. Manufacturing of a data center, this includes not only the building, which would of course involve the concrete, reinforced steel, aluminium, etc., but also manufacturing of IT components. And here we are talking about servers and the storage equipment, etc. And then, of course, cooling that was already mentioned, quite an important topic within the data center context, and the power supply regarding the functioning of the data center. And then we have also to assemble and make this data center operate. And here again, training of artificial intelligence models is quite a significant use of in this operation phase of the data center. It was also mentioned the possible uses of waste heat from the operation of data centers. And finally, we come to the end of life of this infrastructure. And here we look into how is it possible to reuse some materials and components, recycling possibilities, and also other destinations trying to avoid landfill and incineration of these materials. So all in all, there are some other quite relevant environmental issues to consider. I've mentioned, and it was also mentioned before, materials extraction, and here we are talking about critical minerals, possibly fossil fuels and rare earth materials. We also should have into consideration possible land competition uses between areas where data centers could be installed and other possible applications of the same land. And here we can probably think of agriculture or other industrial uses as one of the possible competitive issues. Energy stress that may bring the introduction of large infrastructure such as large data centers, especially in fragile grid areas. We know there are still many countries around the world with not such a strong and good coverage of the modern energy services. So there would be increased competition for these resources, and that's the case that I was mentioning before. And then, of course, this pressure puts on the table again if the use could be around fossil fuels or hydrogen or green hydrogen or small or big nuclear solutions. So here we should also consider that this also has an impact on the whole energy system. And then of course, on the manufacturing and disposal and potential pollution and toxicity damages that to ecosystems and human health. And here perhaps highlight the potential issues around carcinogens related impacts from the production of several kinds of IT equipment. Water stress is quite a relevant common issue. Having cooling and use of water in data centers dependent on or cooling dependent on water for the cooling of data centers is perhaps one of such a big concern, and perhaps again having water as resource that perhaps has competition with other uses, for example, again, agriculture. And finally, would like to highlight the component of resilience and adaptation. Of course, this is an important infrastructure that is, again, also subject to climate change and climate-related topics like floods, droughts, and fires. As just examples. So how can we best prepare this infrastructure to be resilient to these hazards? So when we look into the criteria or the best dimensions for sustainable data centers, we should look into, of course, supply of energy. And here we have heard about it, energy efficiency topics, water efficiency, materials, etc. And there are huge opportunities to improve around green procurement. And here we will here you will hear more about some work that UNEP is also doing in this sector, and possibilities around green financing and capacity building and training. And on green financing, perhaps there will be opportunities also around carbon markets. So as I mentioned, site conditions are relevant. It's not indifferent where we locate data centers. Of course, there are natural issues and perhaps also political issues to address, but also site risks concerning climate-related hazards. So it would be important also to have an attention to early warning mechanisms regarding climate change effects. And then around waste management and waste heat utilization, integration of solar, circular economy, eco-design on the definition of design of products, and waste heat recovery opportunities associated with that. So all in all, data centers should have implemented long-term strategies regarding sustainability, have a monitoring and evaluation program in place, and have proper transparency reporting in terms of environmental footprint. So what I was mentioning about sustainable public procurement, we have a team in UNEP called United for Efficiency. You can Google that, and there is an upcoming report about the topic on green public procurement and technical guidelines for energy efficient data centers and computer servers. The objective is to provide public procurers and technical personnel that actually are responsible for procuring new data centers or even refurbished data centers, with simple recommendations on how technical requirements need to be considered during this process of procuring this infrastructure. So please look out for these new developments here. The contents of these guidelines are the ones around performance criteria on power uses effectiveness, water uses, cooling effectiveness, server efficiency, etc. And also on operating conditions, again, location of data centers, renewable energy factors, and so on. So please keep an eye on the United for Efficiency website and resources there. It's coming up soon. Available. And I will just finalize by saying that next month that there is a deadline to submit the revised nationally determined contributions by countries within the framework of the Paris Agreement, and actually is an opportunity to place digital infrastructure at the heart of the climate action policies and standards and frameworks. So we call the attention for this, not only as an opportunity for climate interventions, but also as a concern regarding the issues that I just mentioned. So it's important to use these tools as for example, to develop emissions reporting mechanisms, reskilling of upskilling of professionals, support digital transformation, and promote global collaboration within developing economies towards better climate response. And of course, promotes information communication and behavior change. So there is a wealth of information also in our website, in UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center about these topics. You can perhaps Google there, and you can find written pieces and also webinars recorded and podcasts about these topics. With this, I close. Thank you so much. I'm really sorry for not making this work, but yeah, maybe next time. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Gabriela, and we will share your slides with the participants after the webinar. And I'd like to say that we'll be happy to send the report you mentioned, as well as the upcoming reports that Sin mentioned, to the participants that are registered to this webinar. Well, so I'd like now to open the floor for questions. I know there are already like two questions in the chat. As we are quite a small crowd, maybe I can ask you to switch on your camera, Lawrence and Romain, so you can ask your questions to Sid and Gabriela directly. If you
Yes,
still, yeah.
thank you. Thank you. It was wonderfully. What I love about it is you've clearly laid out the problem statement. So just as way of background, I'm Lawrence Yanovich. I'm the coordinator of the One Planet Sovereign Wealth Fund Network. And so our sovereign wealth fund community is investing heavily in this area. And we had the opportunity to do our own, let's say, a mini forum in Rome just a couple of weeks ago, really looking at the critical issues. And one of the things that has come up is grids and the strain on grids. And thank you. Do I say Sid or Sidharth is your? I heard you somebody call you Sid.
Sid is perfectly fine. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So Sid, yeah. So one of the things we heard, I had some conversations with some leadership around sustainability in Texas about the opportunity in Texas now with data centers coming in, and a lot of the big tech companies coming in and seeking to come up with mixed energy solutions, in effect, to help to maintain their targets. But then the strain that it's going to be on the U.S. grid system specifically, because it's not really built for purpose. And so, what do you see there, and what are the possible solutions?
Thank you so much, Lawrence, for your question.
Sure. Happy to get in on that, Lance. I think that's a very good question. And I think this is something that we will find more and more local distribution companies actually grapple with over time. Firstly, I mean, just to kind of talk a little bit more about the problems that we're already seeing. As I earlier mentioned, there is a big mismatch in the times between a data center construction and, of course, the provision of the capacity that can provide the electricity, but also the networks itself. We already have evidence of distribution companies either delaying or putting on pause new permits for or new requests for connections by data centers. So this is already being observed. There have been, there are some of them already being litigated in court. So it's a problem that is beginning to arise at this early age within the AI itself, AI boom itself. So you can imagine if at the current state of play, we will find this happening in more and more regions moving forward to the 2030 and 2035 period. So that is a key constraint. Of course, we need to ensure that to address this, firstly, we need to have data. I think the big problem with the AI boom and data centers in general is that data on what capacity is being built in what location, what is the plan for it, and how much electricity will be needed. These are all big question marks. This is not information that is readily communicated by, of course, technology companies. And I understand that there are, of course, commercial considerations, because you're at the end of the day, you're competing in a very hyper competitive market, so you cannot give too much information out. But there needs to be a dialogue between the tech industry and the energy industry, and I think there needs to be better planning, which can ensure that the energy sector remains responsive to the needs of the technology sector. So that is, of course, in the very medium and short term. But in the longer run, I think it's already a good sign that the technology industry is signing these PPAs and other forms of agreements with the geothermal and SMR nuclear companies. It's very important to set those signals right, so that we have firm power, generation in the large quantities that are needed, moving on into the, more like 10, 15, 20-year period. Lance, I see you unmuted yourself. Yes, please, if you'd like to.
I might just a follow-on question. And therefore, would a solution then be to bring the tech companies together with the energy companies and investors, let's say, who are investing in both, which has an incentive for both sides to triangulate? And if so, are there existing fora where that conversation is happening, or is it something that we need to put into place?
So the IEA actually made the very first initiative in that direction. We held in December the global conference on energy and AI. This was the first kind of head of energy ministry. So we're talking about ministers, regulatory agency heads, CEOs, and chief executives who work on the energy side in technology companies. So it was the first kind of real attempt to bring them together to, highlight the nature of the problem. But just to say, this is of course not a recurring a platform. So there is definitely a need for, perhaps something that is more recurring and more frequent. Also, just to say that the IEA is currently working on an observatory on energy and AI. So the idea is to have a website or a web page on the IEA website that has information on not just the existing state of play, but from our analysis, where we see data center capacity increase in what geographies and by what quantities moving into the next 5-year period. So there's certainly an attempt. It's the very first attempt of its kind at a global level. But our hope is that there will be more and more players who can actually bring these two industries together.
Well, thank you so much, Sid. And maybe to complement what you said, that's the reason why the French government is working on creating a sustainable AI coalition, which would be also a place for for stakeholders who are interested in moving forward on a question regarding to sustainable AI, as green AI and AI for green, to talk together and to really keep the conversation going through different tracks. So keep an eye for that. That will be presented at the upcoming AI Summit. I think we might have time for last two questions, but can you just make sure that you answer the question in 1 or 2 minutes so we do not run out of time. So I will ask the question from Romain Brilly because he cannot access his camera from the Global Green Growth Initiative. What part of the demand for new data center will be located in developing and emerging country, and in which region? I think, Gabrielle, you touched upon that, but we could not see your slides. And do you see specific challenges for the AI energy nexus in developing and emerging countries? Maybe they're a bit different from the energy challenges we are experiencing in developed countries.
Sure, thank you so much for the question. Yeah, basically it's Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. I would say these 3 subcontinents probably are the most relevant ones and the ones that are attracting more attention, not only of developers but also on the energy sector. Yeah, so these are the issues. I mean, the main issue is that many of these countries, or the countries located in this region, are actually experiencing either not a total energy supply capacity of the whole population, which would be the case mostly in Africa, or they have very fragile still energy grids or electricity grids. So this creates a problem if suddenly you are just installing your own large data center that is quite power hungry, and it's becoming quite impactful from one day to the other in the electricity system of these countries. So this is becoming quite an important issue. Is from day to night suddenly have a huge demand being put and operating in these countries. So yeah, these are the areas and the issues that relate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. And our last question will be from Mr. Jose Renato Larandrera. Could you, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks for the great presentation, both for Siddharth and Gabriela. My question actually links a little bit to the last one because I just present myself. I am conducting a PhD at the University of Bonn on AI sustainability. And I have been identified that there are some countries, especially in the global south, now taking a stance of inviting companies to build data centers in their in their territories, particularly because of, for instance, more green energy that they produce. This is the case, for instance, of Brazil. So I would like to hear from you, like, how do you see this trend? What are your thoughts on it? And also maybe what could be the incentives or even the conditions for that these countries could pose for them, for, I don't know, for instance, foreign companies to come on and build data centers in their territories. And last question, how could that maybe increase, like, how could that involve more local communities? Because we see a lot of them being particularly impacted, especially like indigenous peoples, fisher people, and so on. But once again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Jose, for your question. So Sid and Gabriela, could you try to answer like in 1 or 2 minutes max?
Shall I go first and maybe
Please
Sid
go
can
ahead.
complement?
Yeah, Gabriela, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, actually, Brazil is one of the countries that is being quite under focus at the moment. I suppose also because there are quite high ambitions on the development of green hydrogen in the country because of the natural resources available. Nevertheless, it should be considered that perhaps there is also a need to reinforce the existing infrastructure, also to the supply infrastructure. Not only develop green hydrogen solutions, but also use some resources also to reinforce infrastructure to be able to supply the data centers. And you're totally right. I mean, this could be quite impactful in some local communities, and as I mentioned, competition for land and competition for other resources could put a strain. So careful planning and careful consideration of these matters should be put in place, and hopefully they are. So yeah. I don't know, Sida, if you want to compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, no, that's very well responded. Maybe just one line, a very quick response from my side, which is that I think while there are concerns that, of course, greater data center use can have impacts on grids in places where there already is not enough capacity to meet, the inherent demand that exists in the society, especially in a growing economy. But I think in several economies, take India for example, they also see it as a potential of kickstarting the clean energy supply, capacity, because if data centers from these technology companies also provide some form of revenue certainty. So it helps reduce cost of capital for some renewable energy players, for some clean energy providers, and it can also be a net positive. But all of this will have to come through proactive regulation. It was very interesting in the AI conference that we had from the African Commission. We had senior commissioner who said that we want data centers in Africa. So it is very counterintuitive, but even though the continent is still working towards universal electrification and universal clean energy access, clean cooking access, but they still want to ensure that the modern industry is also present and growing, so that they're not left behind once again as the world moves on to the next level of the technological revolution.
Well, thank you so much, Gabriela and Sid, for all those insights. I'm so sorry that we have to move on to the next section, but thank you so much, and that give us a lot of idea for follow-up webinar. Now moving on to the second section of our webinar, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Jérôme Totel. Jérôme, thank you so much for joining. In this segment, we'll dive into the real-life experience of a data center provider and explore how environmentally efficient data center can drive both technical and financial performance. So Jérôme, you are the Director of Strategy and Innovation at Data4, a major European operator and investor in the data center market, with Data4 being the pioneer in innovative model of ultra-connected, resilient and sustainable data center campuses with facilities in France, Germany, Poland, Greece, Italy and Spain. I'll start by asking you a few questions, Jerome, about your experience, but I encourage participants to contribute their questions as well. So let's get started. Jerome, could you start by explaining the different type of data center that exist, and specifically, could you also elaborate on the types of data centers designed for AI?
Thank you, Hélène. Hello, everybody, and thank you for the invitation. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Perfect, thank you. So to answer to your question, Hélène, I think we have two main categories of data center. You have the very large campus, the core data center, either regional, either national. So for example, at Europe level, you can have a regional data center at Europe level, and in each country, one national data center. So roughly between 100 megawatt up to 1 gigawatt of data center of campus. And you have the second category of data center next to the user in order to answer to your request when you are asking AI requirement to ChatGPT, for example, which is called the edge data center next to the user. So this kind of data center is much smaller, roughly between 5 to 10 megawatt of data center. You need a lot of connectivity because the user needs to be connected very quickly. And this kind of data center is spread in every country. So from an AI point of view, the first category of data center is mainly for training in order to train the model. And once the training is done and the model is created, you can spread the model inside the edge data center next to the user, which is called the AI inferencing data center. Hélène, on vous entend pas.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Jerome. Could you try to put your slide on full screen?
Sure.
If it's possible. Le slideshow ne fonctionne peut-être pas.
C'est bon là ou pas?
Non, mais j'ai l'impression qu'il y a un problème avec le slideshow, donc c'est pas
Parce que
grave.
chez moi, il est en full screen.
D'accord, mais ce n'est pas le cas. Bah, dans ce cas-là, changez juste chaque image à chaque fois, pour chaque question. Okay.
No.
Thank you so much for the technical issue. There's an issue. We cannot have the presentation in full screen again. That's really strange. But moving on. So as we've seen, the data center is growing fast, the data center sector. Can you give us, Jérôme, a few orders of magnitude of the market, especially in France and Europe? And I'd like to know either in the face of this growth, it is possible to build green data centers.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, we did a lot of studies in order to evaluate the quantity of data center that we should build in Europe and especially in France in order to answer to the need of AI. So this is just in a few words, the data center is growing a lot. Every year, by 2030, we can expect 20% of growth at Europe level for new capacity, new megawatt of built data center. And if we see just France, for example, at the moment we have roughly 600 megawatt of data center up and running by 2023. And we can expect a total quantity of data center of 1.9 gigawatt at France level. And inside the 1.9, we can expect roughly 800 or 900 megawatt of data center dedicated to AI. And something which is very important, at the moment, we don't have so many data center dedicated to AI in France. Everything is done in the US. And if we want to succeed to reach this 900 megawatt of data center at France level, we need to be very well organized. It needs to be very quick because it's very, very long to buy land, to have all the environmental and the permits, etc. So it's roughly between 3 to 5 years. So if we want to succeed by 2030, we need to be very well organized. And to answer to your question, when we build a data center, we expect to use this data center for decades. So it needs to be very flexible in terms of technology. It needs to be also adapted to the climate change and very respectful for the environment. And since 4 years, in order to ensure that we are building a sustainable data center. We conduct a life cycle analysis for every new data center since 2020. And this is just an example of a data center located in France with the energy mix of French nuclear energy. And you can see the repartition from a life cycle analysis of GHG emission for every single piece of the data center. So for the construction, for the operation, and for the end of life of the data center. And just a few figures. In terms of, so the main contribution of GHG emission is due to the energy usage during the 20, so the hypothesis of this diagram is 20 years of operation for the data center. And the majority of GHG emission is due to energy usage with the French energy mix. And so it's roughly it's 42% of this, and the rest is due to the construction of the data center, and that's why we for every new data center we try to buy the latest solution technology with the lowest impact. So as you can see, the concrete has a quite big impact when you build the data center. So that's why we have a roadmap to build all the data center by 27 with low carbon concrete at Europe level. We also started to use lithium batteries because the life cycle is better, especially because you are using them for a longer period. And we are also conducting AI solution in our data center in order to optimize the energy consumption and the PUE of the data center. So it's just an example, and just to finish, if this data center would be installed in the US with the energy mix of the US, the impact, the GHG emission would be 6 to 7 times more compared to the French energy mix. So that's why if we want to succeed the first figures that I gave you, it will be better because we will be able to use data center in Europe, not all around the world first, and secondly, it will be better for the environmental part.
Well, thank you so much, Jérôme. So you've talked about life cycle analysis, or LCA in short. This is an holistic methodology that provides a much more comprehensive view than greenhouse gas emission framework. Could you tell us more about it?
Yes, so this is a methodology that can be used for for a lot of sectors and for every digital service. So we are using it for the data center. So you have a lot of key indicators that can be evaluated. So the idea is really to evaluate the impact of this data center, to build the data center, to operate the data center during, for example, 20 years, and to recycle the data center at the end of the life. And for our activity, we selected different key indicators, like for sure GHG emission, quantity of water, energy used, and also rare earths used for the infrastructure and for the servers, and also all the eutrophication of water, which can be an impact on the construction part. And on this diagram, you see this is a tool that we are using internally, but this is also a tool that we are offering to our customer. So this is a screenshot of the customer portal that all our customer can have access. In gray, you have the impact of data for infrastructure. So all the genset, all the electrical chain, the cooling system, etc. And in red, you have the infrastructure managed by the customer, so the servers, the storage equipment, and the network equipment. And you have different colors of gray. You have 3 different levels of gray for the infrastructure of data for building, operating, and end of life. And you have also in red, three different colors of red for building, operating, and recycling the servers from the customer. And it's quite interesting for the customer in order to evaluate the whole environmental impact of their core infrastructure, including data for infrastructure plus their own server, because we don't know exactly which server the customer is using. So the customer can modelize in this tool every single IT equipment in order to evaluate the environmental impact of his infrastructure. And he can choose, for example, the how many years every server is supposed to be up and running. And if he is able to extend the life cycle, he's able to see the difference in terms of figures. So this is very important, and we think that it's key for the customer to have the holistic view of his core infrastructure, including data for infrastructure.
Well, thank you so much, Jérôme. We can see that it's also like a kind of a partnership when you want to lower the environmental impact of data center, because it's both the data center provider and the customer that have to work hand in hand. Last question, which I'm sure many of you are waiting for. What are the financial advantages to building and operating an environmentally friendly data center?
Good question. We could discuss a long time about this question. First of all, maybe it's interesting, especially for the people who are not in France, abroad on this webinar. This is key figures that has been produced by the ADEME organization. So the ADEME is the French ecological transition organization. So this diagram is showing the PUE based on the kind of data center. So either co-location data center, either owned by a company. And you can see that co-location data center, which are bigger, are having a better PUE compared to local companies owning their own data center. So this is the first answer, and the second one is linked to the money, I would say, the banks, because as you know, the data center sector is a capex intensive sector. We always need money in order to continue to build data center because it's very, very expensive. And when you are asking money for a bank, they are always asking you environmental question. And if you are able to prove that your investment, your asset is better for the environment than the other one, you will have a better interest rate. And for example, we always have the question regarding energy mix, regarding subsidizing renewable energy solution. If we are using we have heat reuse solution in our data center, also guarantee of origin. So all that kind of question are always asked during the discussion with bank. And for sure, it's better for us if we have a lower interest rate. And maybe another example is that could be also much more impactful for us in the future is the CSRD, because since the 1st of January 24, we have the CSRD. So for example, Data4 is impacted by the 1st January 26. And after this date, for sure, we will have to be much more transparent with the banks in terms of sustainable initiative if we want to have a lower interest rate. So, and just a last example in terms of financial impact. AI, we are using a lot AI with different use cases in our data center. And when you are able to decrease the PUE thanks to AI, it's a financial impact because we are using less energy, and at the end, we have an invoice which is lower. If we use AI also for managing preventive maintenance in order to, for example, just a very small example, but change the filter of the cooling at the right time and not doing it on a systematic way. It means that it's better for the environment because you're not changing the filter too many times first, and it's also better for your investment because you're not spending money if the filter is clean. So it's just different example, very basic example, showing that being sustainable is possible, and in the majority of time, it's better for our spend and our bank relationship.
Well, thank you so much, Jérôme, for sharing with you some of the insight from Data4. And I know that sustainability and innovation are at the core of Data4 and goes hand in hand. So thank you so much for this very super quick overview. If any of you are interested about like knowing more, I'm sure that Jérôme will be happy to answer your question, or he can reach out to you. Maybe we have time for one question. So Marlène, if you're still online, you can switch your camera on and ask your question. If not, I can read out loud your question for you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jean, for your presentation. My question is about the breakdown you have shown. And I was wondering if it's foreseen that it remains the same over the next 20 years, or if the development of computing power could change a little bit this breakdown. For example, if the new rack have a larger embodied footprint, or if we will have more processor replacement, it can also change the embodied footprint.
Yeah.
All of that.
So, good question. Thank you, Marlène. In fact, for every data center, it's not an average of all. We have 35 data center at Europe level, and the figure I gave you is just for one data center. So if you are in DC1, you have a specific impact. If you are in DC21, you have another impact. So it really depends on the data center where you are, and also on the technologies that you are embedding inside your own platform. At the moment, we have, for example, some specific GPU, but not the latest one from NVIDIA, and we are conducting a specific project internally in order to add this kind of new GPU inside our tool. But the tool is with existing technology, not with future technology that we don't know exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Jérôme. So maybe like one last question, and if there are other questions, maybe Jérôme, if you have time, you can answer them directly on the chat. One from Romain Brilly from the Global Green Growth Initiative. With which of the edge and core data centers is the fastest growing market segment worldwide, if you have the information, or at least like on your market? How do you expect the rise of smaller, more efficient AI model will affect growth in both segments?
I need to read the question again, sorry.
Sorry.
Because I didn't solve the question with my presentation. Okay. In fact, the figures I show you regarding how many megawatts we need in France, in Europe, etc. I'm not able to tell you. So for the first wave of the AI, I would say it would be in a training data center, very important and large campuses of data center. Why? Because the use cases where we need a data center next to my house in order to answer when I have a specific question, to be honest, the use cases are very few at the moment. So it's okay if we build one single data center at France level, for example, in order to answer to all the French citizens. One day, but I'm not able to tell you when, probably we will have to spread much more the data center in the territories. But for the moment, to be honest, despite the fact that we think that we will have data center everywhere, etc., the use cases are very few, and just one single proof. All the majority of use cases that we are having at the moment, they are all produced in data center in the US. So, and it's working quite well. So it's, for me, the latency for the moment is not a big issue.
Well, thank you so much, Jérôme, for your time and for your presentation and insight. As I said, if people have a follow-up question, they can always send their question to Jérôme. So now for the final part of the webinar, I'm honored to welcome Paolo Bertoldi from the European Commission. Thank you very much for joining us. Paolo, you are a senior expert at the European Commission in the field of sustainable energy, climate change, urban planning, and energy efficiency. You led the work on the Data Center Code of Conduct and the Data Center section of the Green Taxonomy. With you, we'll be looking at how the EU regulation has driven innovation by raising the bar on the environmental efficiency of data centers while increasing their competitiveness, and what challenge lie ahead. Paolo, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you see my slide?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
So thank you, Hélène, for the presentation. Good afternoon or good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to be presenting at this very interesting workshop with very distinguished speakers before my presentation. And I'm just saying a lot of what they say, maybe with different data, but reinforcing the message. And of course, the focus will be on improving energy efficiency as a key way to decarbonize the artificial intelligence revolution and in general the data center business. So we all agree that even before AI, the internet traffic, more usage of mobile phone, 5G, downloading, streaming, gaming has increased the workload of data center at the data communication networks. And so the consumption has been steadily increasing up to 2022. And this is, as I say, internet user increased by 78%, internet traffic, and also the crypto mining was not mentioned, is another sector that's driven up consumption, let's say, in data center in broad definitions. And we should never forget that the consumption is not just in the data center as a physical infrastructure, but also in the communication and data transmission network, which brings the data from the end user to the data center and back to the end user. So what is the consumption now data center globally, and what is estimated to be in 2030? There are some studies, in particular some regional studies. I'm going to present in more details the European one carried out by the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. But as well, just to mention a very recent one by the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, which is a very good, well-known authority in this area, focused on the US market, and showing that already today in the US market, data centers represent 4.4 of total electricity consumption, so much more than what is where we are now in Europe, around 2.3, 2.2. And it's predicted to basically more than double to 2028, due mainly to AI. Then I checked a study by Deloitte showing that the data center will grow from globally, in this case, from about 536 terawatt hours, about 1 something, less than 2% of global electricity consumption. Of course, US and EU are more advanced. Developing countries have a much lower share of data center consumption, to about 1,000 terawatt hours. So this is about 1/3 of total electricity consumption in Europe, a huge amount. And McKinsey has a similar prediction. I don't want to dwell very much, but just to give an idea. So this is the graphic representation on the left-hand side, the Deloitte studies showing also the data center consumption globally raising to 3.7 of total electricity. Of course, also electricity consumption will be increased due to the electrification of building and transportation. In the center, the middle center, the US study by the LABN. And then on the right-hand side, the European study by McKinsey, and below again, McKinsey. So, and all of these studies have slightly different numbers, but have an agreement that first, the consumption will grow at 2030, more than doubling. And that, of course, there is, as already was indicated by the previous speakers, there's a range of uncertainty on the penetration of AI and the uptake of AI. But basically, all the ranges here show an increase, despite the very strong efficiency gain that we have in the processor, the graphic processing unit that was already indicated previously. In Europe also, we had a lot of estimate, and even for year 2020, we had a very divergent result of different studies. So we embark in a rather thorough studies in 2022, assessing the energy consumption data center in the EU27. And basically, in the old study, the range was 40 to 100 terawatt hours. Of course, 100 was really too much, and 39 maybe on the low side. And we concluded basically with a very thorough study using a lot of data from a national report where they're available, in particular larger market, the Nordic countries, Netherlands, Ireland, Germany, which collectively cover about 80% of the market. So we knew that these accurate studies, we were at least capturing very accurately 80% of the EU market. And for the rest of the country, we use some kind of modeling, try to guess what could have been the consumption data center. See, this is how we divided the European Union member state in different categories based on the data availability and the study consulted. And we came up with a result of between 55 to 66 terawatt hours in 2022, about 2.2 to 2, maximum 2.7 of total electricity consumption. Majority of this is due to co-location and hyperscale data centers, which, as was said before, tend to be a bit more efficient, while enterprise and old-style enterprise data center account for about 40%, the smaller data centers. The top 4 markets in the European Union are Germany, France, Netherlands, and Ireland, and account for about 2/3 of the total European Union energy usage in data centers, despite having less than 40% of the total population. And then if we come up with the 12 top market, we account for 95%. So Eastern and Central European countries, the new so-called new member state, tend to have less data center penetration, and therefore their consumption is quite small. In terms of absolute value, Germany is the largest market with about 18 terawatt hours, so very like 1/10 of the US consumption, followed by France. And then we have some countries which were already highlighted, which have a high share of consumption of national electricity covered by data center, in particular Ireland. At the time 2018, now reports are above 20%, so the consumption of data center in Ireland keep growing. Netherlands around about 6, Luxembourg, Denmark, Germany, and France. And say the European average is about 2.2 to 2.7, so here I summarize as 2.5. And this graph show basically the absolute in blue bar, so Germany being the largest country has a much larger consumption than other member states. And the yellow dot is the share of national electricity consumption. So you can see Ireland really as outstanding from the rest. And then you can see basically Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Denmark having a high share, around 5%, so above the share in the US. So it means a lot of data center in these 3 countries, and then countries really with low penetration. So the second part of my presentation is to show you what can be done to reduce energy consumption in data center, mainly through the implementation of energy efficiency. And in particular, the European Union had a program since 2007, most likely the first program in any region in the globe addressing specifically energy efficient data centers, which was a voluntary program and still is running, developed with a lot of support from the industry, from the data center operators, and from national authorities. So basically, in this program was created basically some metrics to capture efficiency and other parameter, and also to understand what can be done. At the time, there was not much knowledge of what could be improved in a data center. Now there is a lot of information that is very likely implemented by most of the new data centers. So the new generation data center, we see a big improvement in efficiency. And the famous PUE, if at the beginning of this program was above 2, now on average for the participant is around 0.5. And we see a lot of data center of new design, particularly by hyperscale, but also by co-location, being between 1.2 to 1.1. So it means very efficient data centers. course, when we talk about data center, we have a lot of different type of operators. The one that operate the full data center, the one that provide the infrastructure for the client, their customer. And so we care for all of them. And at the core of the program is a set of more than 100 best practice in all the parts that make a data center. From the overall energy management to the infrastructure, delivering the cooling system and the electricity system, to the IT equipment, to the optimization of the environmental condition in the IT equipment, the cooling, and the overall, as I say, control and measurement of the different parameters in order to manage the best and most effective way the data center. I'm focused now on giving some example for a few minutes in a sequence of slides of what can be done on cooling. But as I said, these are about 20-25 best practice, but out of the 100 total best practice. And why cooling? Because cooling at the moment is still about 40% on average of the consumption of the data centers. And the real job is done in the IT part. And what is important that the IT part is optimized, but then not too much of the energy is used to cooling the IT part. And there are solutions that can reduce this so-called overhead, energy overhead in cooling, reducing basically from 40% to maybe 10%. And so this is captured by a better, lower PUE. So first, the airflow management, traditionally, all our majority, not all of them, majority of our data center are air-cooled, which is maybe an old technology, but very much still in use. So how to optimize the flow management, then how to have a very efficient equipment that provide the cooling, including regular maintenance, optimization, set points. Very important and point is we don't need to cool the data center to very low temperature, ranging like 20, 21, 22 Celsius, but the IT equipment can safely operate at higher temperature, around, I would say, from 24 to 26, but we have also example of data center operating at 27 degrees. So this is, and equally also the humidity range can be expanded. So a simple way to save energy and improve efficiency is to raise the temperature and humidity set point in the data center. And of course, using free cooling. Every time the cooling can be provided by fresh air, outdoor air, instead of a mechanical compression like a chiller, is very much very important and very much nowadays also implemented by the majority of data center, also in Southern Europe. And this is a very good result. Of course, not all year round like in Scandinavia, but is important. But free cooling can also be provided from water in rivers, in lakes, from the sea. So there are a lot of alternatives. And lastly, I would like to move to the new technology. This is emerging, and it's very much related to artificial intelligence, as you will see in the next slide, which is using, instead of air cooling, which is, I would say, generally pretty inefficient, to liquid cooling, which is much more efficient because of the heat transfer property of the water or other liquid refrigerant. And there are a different type of option here. And very much the industry now is looking with great interest, in particular due to increased power density of data center due to application of AI. It's important to notice that this best practice is not just used for this voluntary program, the European Code of Conduct on Energy Efficiency, but also by other initiatives. For example, one important to mention here is the European Taxonomy for Sustainable Activity, which is related to the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And the taxonomy requires for investment to be labeled as a green investment in a data center to basically having this data center implementing all the best practice of the Code of Conduct. In addition, the taxonomy requires also that this implementation is verified by an independent third party. And for this, the JRC has translated the best practice document into an assessment framework for data center, which is intended to help determine whenever a best practice has been implemented by an independent third-party verifier. Moving quickly now to AI, because what I presented most probably is the traditional data centers, but we know that will change very rapidly. So the first thing to note that the power inside data center will dramatically change. Inside data center, there are traditional racks, which contains the servers. Each rack has a power of around 5 to maximum 10 kilowatt traditionally. With it now AI, due to usage of very powerful graphic processing unit, GPUs, this power will be 10 or 20 times higher. We're talking about 60 kilowatts, so about 130 kilowatt. So at this level of power and related heat emission by the processor, air cooling is not anymore an option. Everything has to move to liquid cooling, and there are very effective solutions implemented already in high-performance computing that will be also implemented in AI data center cooling. So we see, as was already noted before, not only a dramatic improvement in the processor efficiency, but also a strong improvement in the cooling efficiency of data center in future. The second point is that most probably, and was also hinted in a previous presentation, we see bigger data center, centralized data center for AI learning, where the training phase of the AI will take place with a lot of data crunchings. These require a lot of power, usually a large data center, which can be located where, doesn't matter where, and most probably very important is where there is a lot of available green energy, might be cold air, and most probably land could also be cheaper because there's also cost. So don't need to be in the typical data center hubs that in Europe are the big capitals, London, Paris, Amsterdam, Dublin, to name a few, but where there is very difficult to find power, but can be anywhere in Europe or in the world. And then smaller data center where the inference phase of AI can take place, which can be near the usage in factories, in cars, in hospital, in research center, where enabling very low latency, and also the usage most probably of renewable and green energy that can be locally available, and also good interaction with the local grid. So instead of having a 1 gigawatt big data center, we can have a lot of smaller 1 megawatt or less, or maybe 100 kilowatts, small, efficient, and renewably powered smaller edge data center. So with this, I would like to move to some consideration or conclusion. We all agree that AI offers a huge potential to drive innovation in many sectors, smart cities, autonomous vehicles, healthcare, science, research, etc. We know that this will require additional power because of the computational need, processing a lot of data simultaneously. It is essential, therefore, that this is done in the most efficient way, and cooling must be liquid for physical reason and will be more efficient, but again, especially emphasis on lowering the overheads of cooling is important. But we should not forget also the consumption hardware and software and algorithms. And in particular for software algorithms, there are not yet metrics to capture their efficiency. And here is a big task for researchers, for academia, and industry to come up with good metrics. The second recommendation that AI is very important, but should not be abused. So we know that ChatGPT search or Google search have a factor 10 of difference in energy consumption. So again, use AI whenever is needed. This additional power that is predicted to be needed by AI data centers must be met with green or renewable energy. Otherwise, greenhouse gases will increase. And sometimes in the rush to construct additional data center where there is no power available, maybe the traditional fossil fuel power generation will be considered and will be implemented, which will be very bad from a point of view of global greenhouse gas reductions. It's important that whatever it is generated, and a lot of it will still be generated by the processor, is reused as much as possible. And also there is a strong interaction between the data center and the grid. So offering service like balances, the flexibility and demand response with batteries and other, for example, standby generation. Finally, it's important to have national EU policies, but also local authority can have their say in improving efficiency and for renewable in data centers. And finally, also imposing limit on water consumption, which is another big impact of data center. Whenever they grant building permission, they can have a locally requirement on efficiency, renewable and water that must be met if a data center would like to build a data center. And we know some example already from Dublin and Amsterdam, where they have enforced some, for example, moratorium due to a lack of power. And this could be linked also to limit on the PUE, for example, or on the water consumption. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you need more information about the EU Code of Conduct, you can visit the relevant page in the Europa EU site, or you can contact me for other information related to this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paolo. We're running a little bit of time, but I just wanted to ask you a follow-up question with regard to the virtuous partnership there has been between the EU Commission and the industry over the years in building this code of conduct and really helping the industry to raise the bar in terms of sustainability without I would say compromising the competitiveness of the data center industry in Europe.
Yeah, basically, when we started, it was impossible to have a legislation. And now, of course, there is also the Energy Efficiency Directive, which reinforced the message and basically impose some kind of, in future, may impose some kind of requirements. At the moment, there are only reported ones. I say the experience in the Code of Conduct has been very positive because the industry has been very cooperative. They share their knowledge with us, and they help us to establish this best practice document. It is a living document, so every year is revised. And most of them are implemented. And even we have signed that sometimes a company, whenever they don't would like to, or they don't sign up with us, but still they look at this document as a reference guide. And it's not just, as I said, a work of the Commission, is a collaborative effort between the Commission, public sector, and the industry, which is the private sector, because I think there is a genuine interest in the industry to reduce their carbon footprint and also, of course, save energy by being more efficient. And this is also resulting in financial savings.
Well, thank you so much, Paolo. Thank you so much for your insightful presentation. We will share, as I said, all the presentation with you, as well as the replay. Before we wind up this webinar, I wanted to say a few more words about the Sustainable Coalition, the Coalition for Sustainable Artificial Intelligence that we are currently working on in preparation of the AI Summit. The idea, as I said, is to have a multi-stakeholder coalition of entities being states, companies, NGOs, international organizations, which are willing to work in a cooperative way, in a non-binding way, sharing a best practice, ways of scaling initiative to one country to another. The idea being to work on both aspects of sustainable AI, which are the environmental footprint of AI that we delve a little bit into in this webinar, focusing on data center, but also with regards to how to best use and mobilize AI to help us solve our environmental climate issues. So if you're interested in learning more about this coalition or joining, I will share the website with you. It's really easy. You have to look at the share vision and sign on it if you're interested, and you'd be part of this coalition of multi-stakeholder. The idea being that we carry forward the more meaningful cooperation at the international level and make sure that this topic is moved forward together in the right direction for the sake of future generations. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this webinar has been insightful to you. And as I said, replay of the webinar will be available shortly, so feel free to share it with others who might benefit. And if you have any further question or feedback, feel free to reach out. There will be a follow-up email sent to all the participants. And have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at a future events. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye.